All right. So, welcome once again to my tutorial. So, we're just going to continue from where we stopped yesterday. So, yesterday we created a React application with npm create vit at latest, then space dots, and then we ran npm install, and then we opened up the project in VS Code, and then we ran npm run dev to start the project in development mode. Now, so we're just going to do that again. Let me start my project npm run dev. So this was what I created yesterday. All right. So I'm just going to copy this and open it up in a browser. And we'll definitely have something like this. Now, so today we want to talk about components and templating. Components and templates. Now, excuse me, but before we do that, I just quickly want to show you something. Now, head to your um, extensions, this icon here, and search for simple React snippets. Interestingly, I've searched for it before, and you should see this. Just click on it. This simple React snippet by Book Holland. I've already installed it. So install it, and once it is done installing, just come here, click on it, and look for settings and type emmet, emmet. Now, so you should have something like this. Excuse me. So under this emmet include language, now I'm going to include this item. Now I've already included it, but you should not have this, in yours. But if you have it, then you don't need to follow this step. So you click on add item and type in JavaScript here. Then the value will be JavaScript React in this order. JavaScript React, no space between it. And click OK. Click OK. So once you have done that, you should have something like this. And that will be all. Now, as we proceed in this tutorial, we're going to see the reason why we just did what we did. So let's go back to what I was talking about earlier. Component and templating. Now, one of the reasons why React is a good front end framework and why it is preferred by many developers and many projects is because it allows us to do what I call page assembling. Page assembling. Now, what is page assembling? Or I just hope I've used the right word. Now, page assembling is, that ability to build pages from several other components. From several other components. Now, take a phone, for example. Now, a mobile phone or a laptop computer. Excuse me. Now, it's basically an assembly of different components. The, for example, the phone is, the screen attached to the panel, right? To the speaker, to the battery. Now, those are components that make up the phone. So it means that a phone is not built as a single entity. No, different components are built differently, sometimes from different factories, and then assembled together and you have a phone. So usually engineers focus on building these different components. For example, I learned that Hawaii, if I pronounce it well, have different factories for different components of their phone. They have a factory that just focus on building the panel. They have another factory that focus on building the screen. Another factory that focus on building the battery, and like that's why you see, excuse me, you can buy, you know, buy and replace a component that is faulty. So when you talk about a phone, you're basically referring to the components that are brought together to make up the phone. Same thing applies to a laptop. Same thing applies to a pedestrian bridge. A pedestrian bridge, for example, is not built as a single entity. It is the different components are built and then assembled on the site where you have the bridge, such that if any component is faulty, you can easily replace. I remember the time where Third Milan Bridge was shaking and they had to replace, many of the pillars that hold the bridge. So the same thing applies to web pages in React. Web pages in React can be built by assembling different components together. Now, let me give you a good example. Now, look at these websites that I built, you know, sometime this month. Now, this is basically the index page, right? What you usually call the home page. Now, you can't see home page here because the logo would basically take us to the home page. Now, so this home page has the nav bar, right? This dark header here has the nav bar, and then it has this hero section. Then if you scroll down, you have this parts. Then you also have this part, right? This part. Then you have the footer. Now, these are basically components. The navbar is a component. This hero section is a component. In fact, even a button can be a component. Now, this is a component, this is a component, and this is a component. So this page, what makes up this page are the different components that we brought together to form or build this page. We have brought together the navbar, the hero section, this section, this section, and this section. Now, the components themselves are independently built, just like a phone component that is independently built. The panel, for example, is independently built, the screen is independently built, and then they are brought together, assembled together, then you have the phone. So the components themselves are independently built. So in our React project, we are going to be building independent components, right? We're going to be using components, independently, and then assemble them to have a page. Now, if you take a look at the About Us page too, you have the same thing. You have the navbar. If you notice, the navbar here is the same as the navbar here, right? They have these parts and they have the same footer. Same thing applies to the watch page. Different components assembled together, right, to form the page. Now, the good thing about components is that they can be reused. If you notice, what I have here is the same thing I have here. The same thing. Lead with additional economic city Ibadan. Now, if you look at this place, lead with additional economic city Ibadan, the same thing. So, what is happening is that I'm using this component, I'm using it in the home page and also in the cities page, the same component. So, I don't have to always build things from scratch. When I need it, I only have to use it. For example, the footer is a component. And if you notice, it's on every page. Okay, it's not on the watch page. but it should be, it's also not in the contact us page. Can you see why? Because I'm not using the footer component in these two pages, but it's in the home page. The home page. It's in the home page. It's on the home page, and it's also on the about us page. It's also on the cities page. And if you notice, it's the same thing. Look at the same thing. The same thing. So React makes it possible to build a page by assembling several components together. Now, one other beautiful thing about components is that you can even use a component written by someone else in another project. You don't have to build the component yourself. You can use it, for example, these engineers that repair phone, right? When your screen breaks and you take it to an engineer, he simply buys the screen and replace it. He's not the one that built the screen. He bought it. Someone else built it and then he bought it to use. So React makes building project faster by, you know, using what other people has built in your project. For example, there are several navbar outside there, several navbar outside that other people, other company have built. I only need to download it and use it in my project. That means I don't always have to build my navbar from scratch, even though I like building my own navbar from scratch and style it the way I want to. I don't necessarily have to build. In fact, there's something called Material UI. Let me show you. MUI, Material UI. Can you see the React component library? So there's a library for React components. If you need, for example, let me go into it. If you, it gives you anything you need. If you need a button, you can download a button from um MUI. Can you see? These are several. You must have seen this in websites before. And somehow you'll be thinking that, oh, they're the one that built it. No, they're just using someone else's component. Look at this button. You would have seen this in mobile apps, right? Or even websites. This is where they got it from. Look at check button. So you don't always have to look at this. So you don't always have to build things yourself. You can download the component and use it in your project. Let me show you um the DLCs coming. Right, look at component here. See input. See input. Autocomplete input. Let me scroll down. Can you see? Can you see? So this is a component. This is also a component. So it means that I don't always have to build things from scratch. I can just download the component and use. Look at checkbox, right? Look at checkbox. These are the available checkbox, right? So it makes your work faster, basically. Look at button, texts, contained, outline. These are basically buttons. Let me show you see tooltip. You know what tooltips are now? If you don't know, I'll show you. See, this is a tooltip. When you hover on something, something pops up and say add, right? Add. I see. This is a tooltip. This is a tooltip. So you don't have to always build things yourself. You can. There's a library where you can download. Look at navigation breadcrumb. I see. Let me show you app bar. App bar is still loading. Can you see? App bar. See app bar. This one has a search button. Then it has, these are the different app bar. Can you see my nav bar here? Look at it. So this is a complete nav bar that this company has built for you. You only have to what? Use it. Look at this one here. You can put your logo here, you can put your links here. So you always don't have to build your component from scratch. You can simply download it from another project and use in your own project. And it makes your, I mean, imagine, you know, working on a project and knowing fully well that some things are being built for you. You don't have to build some things from scratch. You only have to download them. But this navbar, I built it myself, right? Because I needed a custom made navbar. So it's good to know how to use components by other people and know how to build your own components from scratch. So I hope that's clear enough. Now, so let's look at what you know a component is. So it means that in your React projects, right, you are going to be building pages and you are going to be building components. So when you have a project to work on, you must be able to decipher what pages do I need to be will I be creating, then which components will I need to bring together to build that page. So let's head straight into our project and see how you can build pages and components. Now, so the first thing you want to do is that inside your SRC folder, we're going to have two new folders created by ourselves. One will be pages. So this folder will house all your pages. For example, there is a folder that houses this home page, this about page, city page, and the likes. Now, so you're going to create another component, sorry, another folder, and you're going to call it components. 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 So these two folders are very important. Your pages folder, your component folder. So this pages folder houses all your pages, your component folder houses all your components. Now, how does a component look like? What will be inside, the file or the folder? Now look at this app.gss, for example. Now your component will be in the extension of your component will be .gsx, right? Now don't forget I said that components are independently built. That means that each component will have its own HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's like a mini project themselves, right? But in your root project. Now, so this is a typical example of a component. Now, from yesterday, we know that this um, template here is what is currently rendered to the screen here, right? So what you have here is what you have here, right? Now, what's basically happening in this folder? First of all, every component is a function. A function. Now, this app.js is actually a component called app. So you have function app, right? Now this function returns this template. Let me delete everything and start from scratch. Now I could write div and say app components. Now if we check our screen, can you see app components? So this function app is returning this template, right? So this is basically how a component is. We don't need this for now. We don't need this for now. So if you are going to be creating a component, you must bear this in mind. A component is basically a function. It could be called anything. This could be called um, something else, right? But but the name of the function must start with capital letter. It must always start with capital letter. If you are going to be building a component for navbar, for example, it has to be nav, capital letter NAVBAR, navbar, and then you must export the function. So what you have here must also be what you have here. But you don't have to bother about writing all this from scratch, memorizing it. Now, the reason why we installed Emmet, I've deleted everything we have inside Emmet, is that, oh sorry, simple React snippets. When we install simple React snippet here, is for auto completion. Now, if I want to write a component or build a component, I just need to type SFC. SFC means stateless component functional components, and press tab. Now the reason why this is possible is because we have installed simple React snippets. If you don't have simple React snippets installed in your Visual Studio Code, this will not be possible, right? And so I'm just going to call this app. Now, if you notice, the notation that Emmet brought out for us, simple React snippet brought out for us, is different from what we have there before. Now, what we have there before is function app. Sorry, let me change this one back to app. Function app, right? And what we are currently getting from SFC is const app. Do you get? Now, this notation is the same as the other notation we saw, but this one is the modern. This is called ES6 notation, and that one is ES5, right? So don't disturb yourself. So once you type SFC, right, and press tab, it should bring out the templates for you, the boilerplates. So you only need to name that component. In this case, I'm going to call it app, right? App. So the name here must be the same as the name here. Then inside this return, I can just start writing my templates, my HTML. But this is not called HTML. It is called JSX. Now, so when you write JSX as as normal HTML, it's just like HTML, but it's not HTML, it's JSX. But it's just like if you need to know HTML to write JSX. Now, the only difference between HTML and GSX is that in GSX you don't use class, right? Like this, you don't use class. Class is something else. You use class name, right? Why other attributes stays the same? ID, name, what's it called now? Name, name that you normally use in inputs. What else? You can use href, you know. The other attribute stays the same way except the class attribute that is now class name. So I could write here um, tutorial tutorial video. So what happens is that this function is returning this GSX. So React converts this GSX to HTML and renders it inside this div that has ID of root. That is what is going on here. So this is basically how a, a, a component is built. You build the folder, sorry, create the folder. Inside the folder, you type SFC, right? It's, gives you the boilerplate. Then you name it according to whatever you want to call it, right? Now, you must export the function, but you don't have to bother about, just like I said earlier, bother about writing this from scratch. Just type SFC and it does all this for you. Now, if you look at this main.jsx, the app that we export here is being imported here inside this file and then rendered to this div of id root. And so when we look at it, we should have videos that are here. Now, so assignments: create your install your emmet, create your component folder and your pages folder, and delete what you have in your app and do SFC, and let's have tutorial videos here. So in our next video, we'll be creating components and pages. If you have any questions, we will discuss it later. Thank you.